Angela McArdle, thank you for coming on the show. How's everything going?
That's going great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. For the people that don't know who you are, obviously you were chairman of the Libertarian Party and so on, and you got Trump to show up at the Libertarian Convention and everything. But do you want to talk a little bit about how you got to that position and what's sort of like your origin story into libertarianism?
So I guess yeah, I grew up in a household that was like pretty distrustful of government. I don't always talk about this, but my father was a minister of a Christian and Missionary Alliance church, and they did a lot of international missions. He worked with another company that did shortwave radio broadcast, which they do internet shows now, but specifically targeting communist countries. And so my just growing up, my experience was like, oh, I met people who crawled out of Pol Pot's killing fields. Um, I met people who'd been in the Gulag in the USSR. I've met, people who were members of the wrong Christian church in China and had been, like they were political prisoners, religious political prisoners. So it's like always kind of, government bad, because every horror story I heard was like, and then the government killed them, or tried to kill them. So, you know, that I think that had a pretty significant impact on me. And, like a lot of other people, I was like, I don't know, a teenager, and I just decided I was like libertarian, because I don't know. I wasn't like really that mad at my dad, but I was just like, sounds better than being a Republican, right? Because like weed and your gay friends are okay. But, moving beyond that in my 20s, it was like I read The Creature from Jekyll Island. So had sort of this like worldview imploding moment where it was like, it's all a scam. We're gonna the whole financial system's gonna collapse. We're all gonna die and starve. We're gonna eat bugs, and I'm the only one that knows. And then Ron Paul ran for office, and I was like, oh, there's a bunch of other people who know it's a scam, and we're all freaking out together. So bit by bit, I just got more involved in politics, libertarianism, and eventually I got involved in the party.
Yeah, and you were part of the Mises Caucus, which
Yes.
had a little bit of a surge, I think, post COVID, particularly
Yes.
with that. Can you tell that story, that part of the story? Because I think the inside baseball of libertarianism is fascinating to me because it's like a microcosm of the
Yeah,
political system at large in many ways.
it
So,
is.
can you talk about your role in the Mises Caucus a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was active in the party before the caucus existed. Like I ran for Congress in 2017 in a special election in California. I was doing my thing. I was the chair of the LA County Libertarian Party, which, it's just county level, but LA County's so huge. It's the ninth largest affiliate in the country. Like it's larger than most state level libertarian parties. So I was pretty active and established. And then Michael Heiss founded something called the Mises Caucus, which was going to be focused on Austrian economics, issue coalitions, winning local races, like making an impact where you can. A little less focused on federal races and things of that nature. And so I got involved because like I was really enjoying at the time my just being active in the party, but there were some things that like needed some improvement. Like there's this weird dominant faction in the party that seemed to hate Ron Paul, and I just couldn't really understand it. And it's not like I spent a lot of time with those people, but I was kind of like, well, that's weird, because that's what got me into this. And he's really nice. He's like a country doctor.
Hmm.
It's just, and there was this heavy kind of like libertarian socialist element in the party. I was like, well, this is really fringe and weird. And like those movements about like bottom unity, like it was a little Tumblr-esque. How's that sound? Like it was a little like, yeah, like it made LiveJournal seem like professional. Like it was very Tumblr-y, lots of flags, this is my flag colors, like not literally Caesar. It was like before the Caesar explosion, but it was kind of that vibe. It's like, well, maybe the Mises Caucus can kind of get this back on track.
Well, describe
So
this libertarian socialism, because those two words should never go
they
together.
should not. They really
So I'm
shouldn't.
not sure
We
what
joked
that
about
even
it being
means.
banana octopus. It's- I think that there are a lot of people who like gun rights and they love the idea of don't tell me what to do.
Mhm.
And usually, not always, but usually they're very mad at their dad and they have, issues with authority that are deep rooted and emotional and probably best resolved, in therapy, reconciling with your family, church,
Mhm.
anywhere except politics. And they chose, politics. And, it's like a weird little social club. And that is a lot of the party. There's also the very like, model UN types, which became more dominant after the socialist banana octopus people left. But it's like one of the problems that I see with the party after being involved for like 10 years now
Mm.
is that we have this statement of principles, which is just very beautifully written. It's very compelling. It says we challenge, we challenge the omnipotent authority of the state. I'm butchering it a little bit right now.
Mhm.
That's great, but it doesn't tell you what we're for. It just says like we are mad at the government and we challenge authority. And so one of the side effects is you draw in people who have like oppositional defiance disorder. And they may not be like really libertarians, but they're definitely mad at their dad. And so, the Mises Caucus tried to correct that imbalance, we definitely got into like a little political war with them because they were like, you can't kick me out of like when my dad kicked him out, you're going to kick me out too. Like that kind of vibe, it's like, yeah, sorry. Very
Well,
fun.
so at the core of libertarianism, I think I think I've heard Dave Smith describe it as left libertarians who are all
Yeah.
into weed and like gay rights and things like that, and then
Sex
right
work and
libertarians who
drugs.
are
Yes.
yeah much more about ending the Federal Reserve, getting more freedom, less taxes, things like that,
Yes.
less government intrusion. Um, how does that play out in the politics of
I mean,
libertarianism?
it's essentially there's frustration of purpose.
Hmm.
Many of the people, and some who are on the right too, like they're very puritanical, that, purity spiraling. It's got to be all or nothing. We're so angry at the government. We don't want to work with anyone because no one's perfect. And we've got sex work and drug legalization are our top priorities. Certainly, I don't want to see prostitutes and drug users locked up in prison. But
Sure.
when I think about the damage that monetary policy has had, and also the regulatory framework, like we have this huge battle over, manufacturing in the United States, and we don't have jobs for blue collar workers or, kind of like that entry level white collar, like it's gone. We don't have the minerals even, like it's totally gutted. I'm like, well, these are existential problems because these are the things that cause people to end up just focusing on drugs
Mm-hmm.
and prostitution so that they can cope with their existence. Like, how about we like provide young people with a future? So then they're like, oh, wow, I feel good about myself. I have enough confidence to go talk to a woman, get married, and I could provide for like 2 kids, and yay, But not everybody in the party sees it that way. And so, there's a big fight over it. And then you spend so much time fighting. It's like if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons. Imagine you have a dispute about the rules with the dungeon master. And so you're like, you know what? This dispute is so serious that next week we're just going to dedicate the entire game to mapping out more rules. And you eventually quit playing the game, and building rules are the new game. And that's what the party did. Except Dungeons and Dragons, I feel like, is probably more rewarding than Robert's Rules of Order. And when you try to upset that, which is something I did, I was like, oh, let's do something meaningful. They're like, nah, they like, people lose their minds. They're like, no, we're going to argue about the rule book. We got to fix the rule book. Yeah. So that is, in a nutshell, what libertarian politics are like.
Hmm. Sounds a little dysfunctional. I gotta say.
It's dysfunctional. It's dysfunctional. You can get stuff done,
Hmm.
but what I learned is you cannot engage with Model UN. Like, you have to do as few meetings as possible. You want to own the Model UN people, and you like want to beat them, and you just have to quarantine them like lepers. Like, you just have to, nope. You can set up the meeting. I won't be there. We won't be there. Like, you can talk. We're not going to give you quorum.
Hmm.
You enjoy moving pieces on the board and rewriting the rules, but we're going to go do the real thing.
Right. So you got to be a part of the Mises Caucus, and
Yeah.
post COVID, you had this golden opportunity to
Yeah.
actually take some power in the party. So tell us what happened. Like how, like the libertarian response to COVID was one of the most disappointing things I've ever seen. And
Oh,
that upset me so much because I
it was
expected it from
painful.
Republicans and Democrats. I did not
Yeah.
expect it from liberty loving people who supposedly like freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and things like that. That was extremely disappointing to me.
Yeah, well, some of the like lefty Model UN people were feds and operatives and disruptors. And, we found out later that, and it only takes a handful, right? That some of them were on like the Soros payroll in their day jobs. And it's like, that's very interesting. You're taking Soros money for your foundation and this other thing. You sort of use that influence to get in here because it's like, no offense, like there's some great, great people I work with, but there's also a lot of people. It's pretty easy to be a big fish in that small pond. You demonstrate some competence, you can bathe, you can tie your tie, and you'll climb, pretty quickly. And so the people who got at the top during 2020 were not libertarians. Like, they were more interested in democracy and third choice, which is, what does that mean? What? That's completely like, it's not libertarianism. Like, I don't know. Like, Forward Party, Green Party, those are all like third choices. They're not libertarian. So you get that, right? And I decided to run to be chair of the National Party in response to that. I was chairing LA County at the time. Like, we were holding, we had like black market operations going on Discord so that people who worked in like nail salons, hair salons, massage therapists, so that they could connect with clients. We did vetting, we had speakeasies. It's like, we gotta, like we were cooking,
especially in LA.
And then,
That's like real like prohibition level stuff.
it was prohibition, and we had to vet people, right? So it's like, vet your social media. If you don't have any social media, you've got to find 2 people who vet you, because we don't want to get people like, I was doing like, litigation support for free for these business owners who were defying lockdowns. I was involved in Basilicos, which is this crazy Italian restaurant in Orange County that was like, we're not locking down and you're not allowed to wear a mask in my restaurant. It was nuts. It was nuts.
I would have loved to have gone there. Yeah, that would have been
I was like,
awesome.
We need this at the national level.
Yeah.
This should be at the national level. So, and there were people too at the time, like, who were so angry and fed up. Like, a ton of people joined the Mises Caucus because they're like, well, I want to be an avenue for change. I want my community back. I don't like being an outcast. This sucks. Like, being locked down is just like dehumanizing. I mean, So yeah, we have a ton of momentum in 2022.
And then you ran for chairman. You got the chairmanship.
Yes.
And famously, you got Donald Trump to come speak at the convention. Tell us about that. What happened there, and how did you broker that deal? Why did he even want to come in the first place? That was kind of strange to me. But I applaud you for getting him.
Well, because he's smart, and the people around him, his advisors, were smart. Major props to Rick Grinnell and Susie Wiles, who were like, either, if not like outright planning it and encouraging it, like they were like, it's a good thing. So I was elected in 22. Towards the end of 23, I got a call from Rick Grinnell, who was a former acting director of national intelligence under Trump's first administration and an ambassador to Germany. Rick is great, and he's been in politics a long time. He is a diplomat, right? He reached out to me, and it was like early in the morning. I get this text message from Rick Grinnell, who's like, "Hey, my name is Rick. Da da da. I got your number from a mutual friend." Okay. Anyway. And, I wanted to reach out to see, I'm a friend of President Trump, so I wanted to reach out and see what you guys, what libertarians think of him. So I was just like, oh, geez. I had some coffee, kind of collect my thoughts, and called him back. And I was very diplomatic, which is something libertarians need to learn to do. We're not very good at that. And, I was like, there's pros and cons. We love that he didn't start any new wars. That's the bar. That's where the bar is at right now. Not really crazy about the drone strikes on General Soleimani. We're split on borders. Some of us love that. Some of us don't. But we're very sympathetic to the lawfare he's going through. We think that's terrible and wrong, and we hope he wins. And I think that was a good thing for me to say. And he liked that and was like, let's keep talking, So he flew down to have dinner with me and my family just a couple of weeks later. And we were talking more, and they're like, President Trump wants to get libertarian votes. Like, what do libertarians like? Can you just advise us a little bit? I'm like, yeah, I can give you ideas. Like, this is fantastic. Anybody who's going to potentially be the president is like, I want to make the country more libertarian. I'm like, yes, here's my list, And he's like, okay, so President Trump is going to call you now. And I was like, oh, what? And so I just hand my baby to Rick Grinnell, take the phone from Rick. And I just had a 45-minute phone call with Donald Trump. Wow. In a random restaurant, near my house. And he was so sweet and grandfatherly, and he was very funny, and he had looked through my Twitter, so he knew about me. He'd done his own research. And because I was like, we really love how you make, Democrats' heads explode. And he's like, yeah, you make some heads explode yourself. I looked at your Twitter account, and, it was really funny. And he's like, I got to get the votes. That Jo Jorgensen, she cost me the 2020 election. Can't have that happen again. I got to get the votes. How do I get the votes? And, I was like, well, I'm the chair of another political party, so I can't outright endorse you, and I don't have a mechanism to just put you on the ballot. That's not how it works for me. But I can tell you how to get the small L vote. I can give you all kinds of, he's like, yeah, I want to get the votes. Let's keep talking. So, I'm just kind of giving him general tips, inflation, regulation, drug war, the whole thing, right? Just A to Z. We like peace, peaceful foreign policy, diplomacy, free trade, all this stuff. He's taken it all in. I can tell he's really paying attention. And he's like, let's keep talking. So I got invited to Mar-a-Lago just a couple of weeks later. And I'm thinking how's this, what do I do? First of all, I had to keep all this on the down low. Because if this had gotten out, because I was going to get reelected in 24, I was like, this is going to be explosive. It's not going to be helpful for me. I'm not going to help make anything happen if this blows up. So I had to keep it very hush-hush. And I was talking to Rick about it. And he's like, President Trump is a deal maker. He's not a regular politician. So whatever you think the libertarians want, make the ask. Even if it's a big ask, he'll negotiate it with you. Make an ask. So I'm thinking what do we want? Obviously in the Fed, but the president can't do that by himself. He can't just end the Fed. That's an act of Congress and Senate, and there's going to be all this, it'll be like Brexit, even if we get it passed. It'll never happen. Not to be, black-pilled, but can't make that ask. What can I actually ask that he can do? And I'm thinking about it. It's got to have emotional appeal. It's got to be exciting to our guys. And I was like, I know what I'm going to do. He needs to come to our convention, and he needs to announce that he's going to free Ross Ulbricht. And Rick's like, okay, like, if you think that's what it's going to do it. And I was like, okay. So I just like, I didn't tell anyone, right? And I didn't tell Ross. I didn't tell Lynn, his mother. I told no one. And so I went and we had dinner, and he was so sweet and friendly. We were with him for like 2 hours almost, and just a couple of other people, like close people to him. And he's asking my husband about weed. He's like, "Do you smoke weed? It's okay, you can tell me." It's just crazy, like surreal moments, And finally, he's like, "What do I, like, let's get down to brass tacks. Like, what do I do?" And I was like, and he wanted to come to convention. I'm like, well, this is going to be political suicide for me, but you know what? We're just gonna do it. I think if you come to our convention and you walk out on stage and you say that you're going to free Ross Ulbricht, everybody will vote for you. They'll scream. They will vote for you. And all the Bitcoiners, they'll hear it and they'll vote for you and they'll give you their money because they have money, unlike my weirdos. He just went, literally, he's just sitting across from me at the table, and he went, "Who's Ross Ulbricht? I'll do it. I'll free him. I'll walk out on stage and I'll say, 'Free Ross Ulbricht,' mic drop, and I'll walk out." And I was just like it was that easy, like, it was hard, obviously. I had to like campaign for a year and some change to get into the position, spend a bunch of money, devote like a good chunk of my life to it. But then all I had to do was just take a meeting with him and be friendly and make the ask. And he was just like, done, And I'm sure that afterwards he was asking his staff probably, "Who is Ross again?" And Rick was jogging his memory and was like, "I think you were going to pardon him the first time, but the attorney general like slow walked it with a bunch of other parts." He was like, "Oh, that was a horrible, horrible man." Yeah. Rick advocated, Roger Stone, probably David Bailey aggressively too, but that was it. He was just like, "Yes, I will do it." And I just continued to work with his staff in the lead up. That was like December, right? So I had a good 5 months, almost 6 months before the convention. And they were a class act, man. They were so professional. They kept their word. They were following on, I was sending them all the social media, like, this is what people are saying, this is what they're taking notes. They're working on a speech, and he did it. And it was crazy. Like, I don't know if you saw convention footage, but it was wild.
I mean, the bigger thing for me was when he actually was free, and then everyone got.
And that was like a year ago. That was a year ago today.
Yeah, that was a year ago today. Yeah, I saw Ross's note on Nostr, and that he's like, a year ago today.
Yep.
I think he said something like, a prison guard like knocked on my door and said, "You're free."
You're free.
It's like, okay, I get to go. So let's talk about that for a minute, because it's not obvious to a lot of people why Ross was so important to a lot of libertarians. Can you give the case for why that became a priority, why that became a realistic ask for the Libertarian Party to get from Trump?
Yeah. I mean, so first of all, credit to his mother for championing his cause publicly for 11 years. Yes. She went to PorcFest, the Bitcoin conference, Freedom Fest, every libertarian, every criminal justice reform event you could think of across the country, like small Bitcoin meetups, small libertarian meetups, Tom Woods events, everything. She was everywhere advocating for his release. She built a movement, and I think that was really important, because without the movement, he would have just been forgotten, he would have been forgotten, but he wasn't. And he was a lifelong libertarian. His mother's a libertarian. He was the architect of the Silk Road website, which lots of controversy and drama around, whether or not it was good or bad, but it was people exchanging Bitcoin for goods and services. Totally unregulated, hardcore libertarian, but also like Craigslist, where you can rate and vet people, and you can see ratings and reviews. And that's what made it so much safer than any other place where you could get like black market services or, questionable gray area products on the internet. And, when the feds went after him eventually, they threw the book at him. 2 life sentences plus like 40 years in federal prison, no eligibility of parole. And when he was sentenced, the judge made a bunch of comments about him being a white man. You know, it's just the grossest, just crazy. Like Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, no offense to them, people use their platforms to do things that are illegal. Some of the stuff on Facebook and Instagram with child trafficking is heinous, you know. They don't approve of that, but people find ways to transact whatever business they want, you know. And Ross had a rule against that kind of stuff. So it's not to say that people didn't squeak by and do those sort of things, you know, but there were rules, some rules on Silk Road. But that's not really what it's about, you know. It's like we have to make an example out of him because he was conducting like a giant e-commerce business with Bitcoin. And that's not good for the US dollar.
Well, the bigger thing for me in that was sort of the weaponization of the Department of Justice, which I think we've seen a lot more of, and as you alluded to, Trump personally suffered from, and that was probably a large part of why he was much more open to that the second time around. I had Alice Marie Johnson on my show, you know, many years ago, and she was talking about, you know, how she advocated for Ross in Trump's first term and almost got him to sign off on it, and then it got slow walked or whatever it was, and you know, she Attorney General just do it. Yeah, so there does seem to be something about sort of that weaponization of the Department of Justice that is sort of endemic in the political system that we have. What's the problem? What, in your view, how do we fix this? Because it really does seem like it's getting really bad, where certain rules are enforced for certain groups of people, but not for others, and you know, they throw the book at whoever they feel like, and increasingly it's people based on the color of their skin. Ironically enough, it's just very strange.
So President Trump, when I had dinner with him, he was actually a little bit late because he was flying in from testifying at his trial in the Southern District of New York, the same district that threw the book at Ross, and that has gone after our, you know, a lot of our other Bitcoin defendants. And he knew, you know, I told him, by the way, it's the same court that's going after you right now. And you could see like gears turning in his head when I said that. The Biden and Obama administration really packed the DOJ full of people who were extremely partisan, like ideologically partisan. This is like, it's like a religion to them, you know, like they are, it's not just that they're politically on the left, like they are true believers in the power of the deep state. Like it's a very weird, like you don't just like walk down the street and meet people who are like, yeah, man, deep state, we own it. We own the world, you know, like our like it's a weird thing. And, you know, there's been a lot of controversy and challenge over how many of them you can fire. Harmeet Dillon in the Civil Rights Department of the DOJ, she's fired like 70% of her workforce, or they've quit, like enraged. But that's not been the case everywhere else. You know, one Bitcoiner who I've helped, who shall remain anonymous, you know, we were told we had to work with the line prosecutors to get his case, you know, like dismissed, a deal, so on and so forth. The line prosecutors hate us. Like they're all hired by Biden and Obama. They are hardcore ideologues. They hate Bitcoin. They hate President Trump. You know, like they're not gonna work with us. They're like snickering to themselves, like, haha, you know, like this is like their religious war on us to like defy Trump, ride it out, you know, slip through the cracks and continue to prosecute. They really have like a hardcore agenda and a different vision for how the United States should look. It's that whole democracy, right? Democracy. It's like, it's very Orwellian, you know. I'm like, I don't think anything is actually democratic about this, you know. And they're like, They're in charge, though, and that's what we have to deal with. It's like whack-a-mole, you know? The administration has a lot of problems, but the DOJ is full of some heinous people. And they're like middle and lower management, you know? It's not
Right,
like Trump
they're the
put
foot
in...
soldiers or something like that.
Yeah. It's not like Trump put in a bunch of people who hate him. That's the opposite, you know? And they try to sneak around, you know, and don't get caught.
Well, so when people like me hear stuff like that, then it's just sort of like I want to doge the entire department, right? But obviously that didn't go that well. Is this like the Fed? I mean, you were talking about being blackpilled a little bit before. Can something like this be reformed without, like, I don't know, revolution?
I mean,
or something? Like,
I think it will involve a litigation battle. If I was in, I would just fire everyone. They will sue, and some of them will regain their jobs, and others won't. And that's the way it's got to be battled out, in my opinion. You know, and obviously people in charge, you know, like have a different view, and they may be seeing things that I don't see. But it's not like you can just give everybody a performance review. The other issue that some of my friends who either work there now or have worked there prior is they're like, well, once we do that, everything grinds to a halt, including cases where people really do need to be prosecuted because they committed like some horrible, like violent crime, or they're entitled to a speedy trial. Now they're not going to get it. They're languishing for like 3-5 years because we just laid off a massive amount of the workforce. It's not the same in the civil rights division where people aren't necessarily, you know, like dealing with the same caliber of crime. So there's all these different, you know, competing views. What I would do, though, I would just fire half the workforce. Like Vivek said, your Social Security ended in an odd number. Bye. You know, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see that, but obviously not really happening. And it does seem like, speaking of the deep state, it does seem to be really deeply embedded and with their hooks everywhere, where it's almost like it seems like an intractable problem. You can try to fire all of them, but then probably some judge says you're not allowed to do it, and then it has to go all the way up to the Supreme Court before you can do it. By then your term is over, and you know it's kind of all moot at that point. And
there, like, that happened today with Don Lemon. You know, he violated the property rights of a church in Minnesota, went in, disrupted their service with a bunch of other people. There have been 3 arrests made so far. The feds try to get a bench warrant issued for Don Lemon, and the judge won't sign it. So, you know, what do you do? They say they're working on a workaround, but it's a problem, you know, like it's a real problem.
Yeah, it seems more ideologically driven, and that's kind of the point, right? Like it's not really justice or fairness. Like they don't seem to factor in at all. It's all about sort of partisan bickering and what gives your party more power and so on. And in that sort of like nihilistic world, I'm not sure you can run anything fairly. It becomes sort of like a power play everywhere.
And that was my experience in the Libertarian Party, right? Like everything becomes a factional war, and it's just about owning the other side or like smacking them down hard enough that they can't come back for you. And it's just impossible with a giant, like it's hard to manage the Libertarian National Committee with 25 people on the board and, you know, a dozen staffers. Imagine how difficult it is to run the United States. It's just like, I know everybody's like screaming with frustration, and you know, like I'm screaming along with you, but when you understand the magnitude of the problem and that there are 1,000 urgent problems in every department and they all are number one, it's like nothing is number one. They just like whack, 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 try to get to the number one problem, you know. And I think that they view right now immigration and, you know, voter ID, to whatever extent they can pass that, as like those are the things that will stave off the immediate existential threat. So then they have to focus all their attention on that. So when it comes to Bitcoin pardons, you know, like other DOJ issues, like you have to make yourself the number one issue because there's just so many competing number one issues.
So one of the premises of this show, it's called Bitcoin Fixes This, is that the fiat monetary system, particularly the Federal Reserve, funding all of this stuff is largely responsible, and that getting
Yep.
rid of that would sort of take the funding out of all of this crap that's happening.
Yes.
I would think that libertarians would be very well aligned on that, but like my impression of the Libertarian Party, other than the Mises caucus, a lot of the other people don't really care that much about the Fed. They would rather, I don't know, march for trans rights or something rather than,
Correct. Correct.
like thinking about monetary policy, which to me
Yeah.
is like 100 times more important.
Yeah, I mean they can check the box correctly on the libertarian quiz, but do they put it in the top 5 issues? No. They're going to put pushing back against ICE. They're going to put open borders, essentially, legalizing sex work, and decriminalizing drugs. Like those are going to be their top priorities. Maybe gun rights. Yeah, it's just, it's like there's this kind of this conflation between it's almost like Satanism. And I mean that in a, like, not in a hyperbolic way, but in like the Anton LaVey Church of Satan, do what thou wilt. There's sort of this conflation between that and libertarianism, which in my opinion is essentially like, like property rights and individual rights, and then other things flow out of that. And that's not really, like, they don't necessarily think about property rights all the time. More just like, I can do what I want. There's no responsibility. It's like libertarianism doesn't work if you don't if you don't like incorporate personal responsibility. That's a really important part. Like you just, like, that matters. And managing the country's finances is a pretty integral part of, like, financial responsibility, the health of the nation, the health of future generations, all of that stuff, curbing all these horrible things that we want to stop, at least limiting them. Yeah. Very different ideas about libertarianism in the party.
Yeah, so I mean, now that you're not the chairman of the Libertarian Party, like what's your view on where it's going? Because as far as I can tell, it's sort of turned more towards the left again with the current leadership.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe we get more Joe Jorgensens and Gary Johnsons that just sort of come in and get the national spotlight for 2 minutes and then leave and don't really change anything.
Well, I mean, I recommend that. What I don't recommend that you spend all of your time on the party. I do recommend that Bitcoiners join the party through the Mises Caucus and do the minimum amount of work required to keep the party signaling the appropriate things on libertarianism. Pop up during the midterms with a short list of demands. Pop up during the general election with a short list of demands. I would love to see a Bitcoiner and a Maha person run for president and vice president in 2028, drop out in exchange and endorse in exchange for serious concessions. What do you think?
I would love that.
That's what we need. So calling all Bitcoin personalities, do you want to run a 4 to 6 month campaign for president, drop out to either get a cabinet position, or if you don't want to ruin your life like that, short-term position on the transition team?
Something like Doge 2 or something. So there is sort of like this one elephant in the room, which is which Bitcoiners are very familiar with, and that's somebody that's had a lot of influence in the Libertarian Party, as far as I can tell, and that's Roger Ver, right? And he's the endorser of Bitcoin Cash. Many of us think he's been very bad for Bitcoin in many ways, and yet he's been a huge donor, obviously, to a lot of different libertarian causes. And as a result, I think a lot of Bitcoiners are kind of hesitant because he's kind of poisoned the well with a lot of libertarian personalities and so on, because he's given them a lot of money. So I know, for example, like Jeffrey Tucker is libertarian. He's done a lot of different things. I've even had him on my show to talk about the COVID lockdowns and so on. But he's also telling people that Bitcoin is a failed project because of what happened in 2017 with Bitcoin Cash. And you have other people that have had him on the show talking about getting him a pardon, largely because I think the case was dropped or settled or whatever.
Roger's case was dismissed completely. He paid a fee.
Right. But I mean, that's I think for a lot of my audience, the people that have gone through the block size war in 2017 and saw what he did and how he tried to centralize Bitcoin and sort of denigrate Bitcoin and use the Bitcoin.com domain to confuse people and so on. Like that holds a lot of people off from maybe doing what you were saying, which is join the Libertarian Party under the Mises Caucus and so on. In many ways, he's like very similar in views economically, I think. But what he did with Bitcoin, I think, has sort of poisoned the well a little bit. What are your thoughts on him?
I've never heard anyone use Roger as an excuse to not join the party. Well, yeah, I mean, he's a good friend of mine, but he's not a U.S. citizen currently. So, I think that he continues to support our efforts to try to get pardons for the rest of these guys. I really appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate that he, gave so much seed capital to Kraken and other organizations. But I tend to steer clear of block wars, conflicts, and just try to get people to where I need them to be politically, which is like, we can have disagreements about Bitcoin. I still use Bitcoin as much as I can. And we just got to get people out of prison who shouldn't be there and try to use our leverage, politically.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, I don't think people would be hesitant if it were kind of neutral, but you go to PorkFest and there are people shilling Bitcoin Cash and telling you that it's the real Bitcoin, right? Like that sort of thing has happened in the past at PorkFest, and a lot of
yeah, there are a handful of people at PorkFest who definitely are for like crypto instead of Bitcoin. I'd phrase it like that: crypto instead of Bitcoin.
Well, and that turns a lot of Bitcoiners off from the party when you feel like, okay, well, Roger's kind of playing with a stacked deck there. I don't.
Well, PorkFest isn't the Libertarian Party, though. I mean, that's
right. But you get what I'm saying. A lot of the gatherings where you would maybe see Bitcoiners and libertarians sort of get together, the situation seems to be that a lot of the people are pro Roger and therefore a little less inclined to be pro Bitcoin and a little more sort of confusey Bitcoin Cash stuff. That I don't think he does that quite as much anymore, just because Bitcoin Cash has done so horribly. I think the price of Bitcoin Cash is the same as it was in 2017 when the thing split, and whereas Bitcoin's done many multiples. So there are realities that are coming into play, but that seems to be at least that would be the hesitation for a Bitcoiner like me.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, that's the first I've heard of that being a concern, but I'd say there's a lot of room. There's a lot of room for Bitcoiners. No one has a Bitcoin or a crypto monopoly on the party. Primarily I've made a lot of overtures to the Bitcoin community explicitly because I think that is just my personal view is that that's the way to go. But obviously, we welcome people who are oh, I use Monero, I use Ethereum. Okay, we don't have, it's not written into the bylaws, that you can't use crypto or altcoins. But yeah, I mean, Bitcoin is where the political power is going to be, quite frankly, in the future. And I read the writing on the wall.
Well, so along those lines, with respect to Bitcoin and all of these, I guess, DOJ, Biden, Obama appointed sort of foot soldiers that really hate it and try to prosecute these people. What are some cases that Bitcoiners should be aware of where you think maybe we should be pushing for a pardon with Trump? Because
absolutely.
We do have some cachet with the president,
yes.
Given what happened in the last cycle, and I mean it was honestly a little more crypto than Bitcoin to be fair, right? You had people like the Winklevoss twins that gave him a bunch of money, and
Mm-hmm.
some others like that. But from your perspective, what are some other Ross-like pardons that we should be asking for if he really is a deal maker and we are put in a position where we can ask for something? Who should we be looking at?
Samurai Wallet defendants, Keone Rodriguez and William Hill, definitely. They both just recently had to report in for 4 and 5 year prison sentences. They are software developers.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. They wrote code for privacy tools. That's it. Roman Storm, similar, although his case is with Ethereum, Tornado Cash. Roman Sterlingov, who is currently in prison in New Jersey for allegedly creating the Bitcoin fog mixer, which he didn't even create. He used it a couple of times, and then the feds just pinned it on him. Ian Freeman from New Hampshire, who had an unlicensed Bitcoin ATM. He had stronger know your customer rules than any national bank. He was so above board, he actually stopped fraud from happening in several occasions on his Bitcoin ATMs, romance scams, things of that nature. Like, these guys are totally innocent, and they should be free. Roman Storm has not reported in yet. He's still figuring out what's going on with his case. But yeah, like, those, they're all within alignment of the Blanche memo, which is unfortunately something that low-level DOJ employees are just denying. They're just pretending it doesn't exist. So
what is the Blanche memo? Can you
the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche wrote a memo saying that they were going to end Biden's war on crypto, and they had a policy. Biden had a policy called regulation via prosecution, which is, do we not have a law written on that? Could it be a gray area? Straight to jail. And so, Todd Blanche, who is a friend to Bitcoin and, handpicked by President Trump, said we're going to end it. But unfortunately, the rest of the DOJ, most of the rest of them, they don't want to comply, and they're like, well, you can't make us. It's a memo. It's not written into law yet, so we're going to do whatever we want.
Is that a fireable offense, or is that?
I wish. I don't. I mean, I would assume so.
I always thought the executive was in control of the entire executive branch. You could fire anybody you want. I thought that was part of the Constitution, but apparently some judge gets to say who you get to fire or hire or whatever.
Yeah. Again, though, there's 1,000 number one problems, and so you need to make it known. You need to make it known that this is an issue, that you care about. Midterms are coming up. The GOP needs people to show up in the primaries and the midterms. And I know that a lot of libertarians, small L, big L, a lot of Bitcoiners, independent swing voters, they're just like, I just don't feel like it. I'm not happy with the way things are going. I don't agree with this or that. I'm not excited. They're just not even showing up. So tell them why and give them something easy that they can accomplish. This is an easy one. Pardoning our guy is so easy. Just President Trump himself, he just signs it, right? Easy. Give them, I'm telling them it's an easy one, but it's got to be kind of call and response, other people have to say, we want it, and we'll support you if you do it.
And sort of, I guess we turn out to vote if he does this for us, that sort of thing.
Yes. We have to give and take. If he gives us something, we have to give him something in return.
He is a deal maker.
He is a deal maker. And, if you find it unpalatable to hold your nose and vote for some swampy Republican, trust me, I understand. What you're really voting for is for the president to not be impeached. That's it, right? Congress is a joke. They're not going to pass anything. They don't listen to the president. He had a hot mic moment where he was complaining that they don't confirm his nominees. They suck. But we just don't want the whole thing to go to the Dems and then impeach him, because some of the cabinet secretaries, like Kennedy, are doing a great job. And we want them to be able to keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah, speaking of which, he RFK, one of the concessions you got out of President Trump was that he would have to have a libertarian member in his cabinet.
Yes.
Are you happy with RFK? Because he was a Democrat right up until he joined the Trump campaign.
Well,
and then he switched to libertarian. So, like, are you happy with that? Or
he was a Democrat, and then he went independent, and then he joined the Libertarian Party. So he's kind of jumped all over. I mean, am I happy? Let me break down your question. I'm very happy with him. Am I happy with all of the libertarians I asked to volunteer to throw their name in for a cabinet position and fight for it, who dropped the ball? No. No, I'm not. People are like, why didn't we get a libertarian in the cabinet? And I'm just like, after a little while, I'm like, with all due respect, who can I put up who is going to pass Senate confirmation, who's willing to do it, And the number was very few people who were willing to do it, and even fewer who were going to pass Senate confirmation. Not because they sucked, but just because of the politicking is just so intense. So lesson learned, like, we have to have people who have like real political experience or like very serious business acumen and professional backgrounds go to bat for that cabinet position next time, because that got dumped in my lap and I could not fill it. Yeah,
it reminds me of I think Dave Smith was being nominated to run as the candidate in the Libertarian Party, and he turned it down. And he was like, okay, well, he was looking for somebody else, and he couldn't find anybody else.
We couldn't find anyone. We went through like
it
six.
Seems like it's not a thing that people seem to want in the Libertarian Party.
People didn't realize, I'll be gracious. They didn't realize that they were going to have an opportunity to be on the transition team and negotiate in Mar-a-Lago. But can you imagine if Dave Smith had run? He'd just run a half-assed campaign. You just do what you're already doing. Pop up on Joe Rogan a few times. Hit some podcasts. You don't have to really do anything. You don't have to go anywhere.
He could just do an issue a week or something like he.
And then go down to Mar-a-Lago and be like, I'm really pissed off about Palestine, and get some picks, some foreign policy picks, and then boom, and then you just peace out and go back to being a comedian.
From being state, that would have been very interesting. But it does seem like a people problem almost. Like there's not enough people willing to step up to the plate on that stuff. And can you honestly blame them? You're seeing a lot of people drop out of Congress left and right just from being criticized, especially about stuff like Palestine versus Israel and so on.
Well, if you want to make a difference, you got to be willing to put skin in the game. I got sued twice for working with Trump and Kennedy. They went after me. I had the FBI calling about the Libertarian Party's Facebook page during the whole day. Just crazy stuff happened to me. All kinds of board drama, agent provocateurs. But I was able to get something done. And that was without a presidential candidate. Technically, I probably could have pulled... I had enough political capital that I could have pulled Chase off the ballot and stuck Kennedy on, quite frankly. But that wouldn't have helped him get a cabinet position, I don't think.
Well, Kennedy got one.
Yeah, so. I think that would have been counterproductive at that point. And that would have blown the Ross Ulbricht deal, So it's like, if we can get someone who's willing to go to bat for the libertarians and the Bitcoiners just for a little bit of your time, we'll get a lot, but they've got to start thinking about it now.
Well, so what do you think is the future of the Libertarian Party with respect to, getting deals and so on? Because at least pre 24, it's almost always been sort of like a platform for a political has-been to just sort of come on the scene and get their 5 minutes of fame and get their 2% and leave. It always seemed kind of pointless to me.
Well, there's two paths, right? We can keep doing that, or we can go with the precedent that I've set, which is you can drop out and endorse in exchange for concessions. And by the way, the presidential candidate means very little for ballot access nationally. There's maybe 5 states where you need it, and they don't usually retain it anyway. So, you know, put that out of your mind. It doesn't matter as far as the existence of the party, whether or not we have a presidential candidate. Doesn't matter. Just use it as a vehicle to actually advance liberty. Like, the opportunity is incredible.
Yeah, and I think be great if more people stepped up, and I would love to see more people like Thomas Massey in Congress, for example. But and you know, it's just we're not seeing people like that there. Maybe it's like a human resource problem. Maybe
I love Thomas Massey, but we're not going to get 435 Thomas Masseys. You're going to get 300 psychopaths, 100 people who aren't psychopaths, and like half a dozen good people. That's the makeup of Congress. Congress is useless. You know, like, I have a couple of friends who are running for Congress. Lily Tang Williams in New Hampshire. She's phenomenal, and I hope she wins. But beyond that, like, I don't care. I care about the president and his cabinet picks, because those are the only people who can get anything done. And not all of them will get anything done, but some of them will, you know, like, some of them will. And that is, like, I just want to focus on what I can change.
Well, so there are Bitcoiners that have some means, and they have maybe some time now, and maybe they're looking for possibly doing something in politics. What would your recommendation be? Like, do you want them to start thinking about running, or how would you if you were to create a path for them to make an impact, what would that look like?
The first thing I would say is that party politics are not a zero-sum game, and do not think of it that way. So you should make friends in the GOP. You should make friends wherever you can. Use some discernment on who you make friends with, but you should make friends. And be very open to the idea of running specifically as a kingmaker candidate in the Libertarian Party. And there are also other races that are important besides the presidential race. Swing vote Senate and congressional races, you can do the same thing to a lesser extent. You need to be willing to stay in the race and not drop out and endorse if you end up running against someone who just sucks and won't give you a single concession. Like, don't make it difficult on them. Make it easy on them. Give them concessions that they can actually do, right? So, like, if you're running for Congress, like, you know, they're not going to have the power to do presidential part. Find something they can actually do in their position, and then be willing to drop out, even if you don't want to endorse, right? Just so long as they stick to their end. You do that, and you'll start advancing. You know, you can end up getting a spot on their team, you know, in their administration. That's how a lot of these things work. They can't make a formal deal on it, but it always shakes out that way.
Well, I mean, especially if it's some sort of executive position, maybe governor or something like that.
Governor, Vivek, like, you know, Vivek is he's been very, very friendly to libertarians. You know, he's like, I'll put a libertarian in my cabinet in Ohio to reach out, you know, like, I want to work with them. I need an endorsement from libertarians. You know, and there's not nearly as much politicking and drama in that, you know, like, it's easier. It's way easier for him to squeeze someone in.
Well, it's also kind of a close race from what I hear. So, like,
I think he's up by like 5 points. Yeah.
So the libertarian vote might actually be the kingmaker there. So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so what are your future plans, I guess? Do you want to be involved with the Libertarian Party for longer, or are you going to stay
Well,
I'm still
chairing the National Mises Caucus right now. You know, we do want people to join at lpmisescaucus.com. Get active, just a little active. You know, and I'm waiting right now to see whether or not I'm accepted into a job that involves a lot of background checking. So that's all I'll say about that. but I'm just sort of in limbo right now to see how it goes.
Okay. Well, best of luck to you on that, and sort of thanks for giving us the inside scoop on all of that and how the sausage is made behind the scenes of all this stuff. Any last words for Bitcoiners? I mean, other than maybe get involved just a little bit, what are your hopes for sort of the political power of Bitcoiners in general? And
you have an incredible amount of political power. Libertarians, like, you're like 1.5% of the vote. You can make or break elections. Bitcoiners, you have the same power. You can make or break elections, so don't be afraid to make an ask. Don't think like, oh, it doesn't matter. I won't get it absolutely matters. You know, like, you don't have to do a lot. You just make your voice heard. Make your voice heard, especially as we get closer to Super Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah, and that'll be. I can't believe Super Tuesday is. I'm assuming you're talking about the presidential one and not like something.
Well, for the midterms, it's March 3rd. I mean, it's, you know, it's a little less super, but yeah.
Okay.
Still there.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that. Where can people find you? Where can people contact you?
I'm on Twitter at RealAngelaMac. I'm on Instagram. You can find me just about anywhere. And if you're interested in helping get our prisoners free, you can also go to freeiannow.org.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.